When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and the latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Shinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we talk about movies that came out on time in our universe because they got delayed in that other universe. I'm your host, as always, Steven Shinder, and this episode talking about yet another superhero movie. This one is The Batman, the Robert Pattinson one directed by Matt Reeves. And joining me once again, it is Mr. Multiverse. What's up, sir?
What is down?
Oh, that's a very valid question, because, with What's Up, we know that it's a Pixar movie, so it's what is down? It's kind of a mystery, It's a little riddle.
It's the sister story to Up, where it's about Carl's brother who is finding a way to the path of hell, and it's really a metaphor for Dante's Inferno.
Okay, so Monster House, got it. I remember a while ago thinking about this. It's kind of funny how Monster House is kind of it came first, but it's kind of Up, but horror. You got the old guy and the house, and the wife is gone or whatever. And it's pretty much just a genre flipped up to me, and I just love that movie, Monster House.
I've seen it. I actually saw it in theaters, and I clearly remember the AC in the theater, broken.
Oh, damn, that sucks. But yeah, I also saw that one in the theater, and I remember I was, I would have been almost 12 at the time, I think, or maybe I was 12, because it came out in October. But anyway, I remember thinking, whenever they talked about puberty or said damn or hell or something, I thought to myself, wow, this is kind of pushing it for a kids movie. And now as an adult, I appreciate the movie even more. It's hilarious. But yeah, so we're talking about The Batman, but as we usually do, we kind of provide context, while I cannot talk today, for how each of us sort of came into the franchise, our experiences with the character and his stories. So what have been your experiences with the Batman IP throughout your life?
It's been with me since I know basic answer right here. It's been around with me since the 90s cartoon, and has been around in my life, at least, since day one, I guess you could say.
Since year one, you could say.
Actually, yes. I wouldn't say that I'm completely oh, Batman could beat anybody with prep time. I'm no, he's just a guy. He's just a guy with insecurity issues who runs around in a bat costume. I mean, I'm a Batman fan, but I'm not oh, Batman can beat Thanos if he just had 5 minutes of prep time. I'm not one of those Batman fans, and they personally disgust me as it. But I do enjoy a lot of the Batman movies. The only even Batman and Robin, I could looking back now, I can have in entertainment. Me and a couple friends a while ago sat down and watched Batman and Robin. One of us had the brilliant idea to do a shot every time there was a cold pun.
Of course.
And I can't remember anything after that.
I mean, it's probably for the best that you don't. But
Yeah. I just needed to chill. What about you, Steven? What's your experience with Batman?
yeah, so Batman is a character I've always been aware of pretty much all my life. Like my older brother got into the whole thing before I did because he grew up watching the animated series from the 90s as well. But like I kind of came to it later. I do remember like when I was a little kid, we had these I think we had Batman Forever on VHS and we even had like these like trays for like eating in front of the TV, and I think it might have been Batman Forever themed, or maybe it was Batman Returns themed. I don't know, but
If it was like that era, it was probably Batman Forever because they slapped everything on Batman Forever and Batman and Robin because Warner Brothers, and this was part of the reason why Tim Burton didn't do the other two movies, was because
of
Warner
course.
Brothers low key kicked him off after Batman Returns and how like controversial it was in terms of like violence and whatever. Like there was whole like conservative stations like trying to cancel it, as well as McDonald's, after they had done a toy deal, publicly did a commercial saying, hey, we don't condone the violence in Batman Returns. And that's when Warner Brothers decided to be like, we're losing money off of this. Let's get Tim Burton off these movies.
Yeah, it's funny because like I know that Batman Returns was kind of pushing the envelope a bit, but out of those four movies from like 89 to 97, Returns is my favorite of those four. And I just love how like 89 is great. I love the aesthetic of it, and it's just like people have talked to death about how great 89 is, but Returns, I just love how it's full on Burton, like it's full on gothic, embracing that gothic aesthetic. And I mean, like the Burton films were influential on Batman the animated series. You had the Danny Elfman theme, and a Gotham City that looked like it was in the 30s or 40s, but it's supposed to be like the present at that time, and it's like yeah.
It's actually kind of funny because Forever is actually, I will defend Batman Forever because that's my favorite, and I got but Returns I have a soft spot for, even though it's probably my least favorite. I actually, fun story, last year for my birthday we rented out a theater in Orlando to watch Batman Forever. And when I say rented out, it was just me, my parents, my brother, his wife, and my sister and her boyfriend. We all went there to this theater to watch Batman Returns. And hand to God, in the middle of the theater where they're like, I'm trying to remember the exact scene where everyone was like, what did you take us to see? Because we were just like literally like, my sister's boyfriend and I were literally like Mystery Science Theater the whole time.
Yeah, with like the commentary and the snarky remarks.
Yeah. And then down the aisle, my brother says, what the hell is this movie? Like he's just like completely. I lean down and he's looking up at like his hands are out, like give me an explanation for these penguins, because we got to the scene with the penguins doing the funeral for Oswald, and he's like he just had this look of, you've destroyed me.
Heck yeah, who says Batman Returns isn't fun for the whole family? But with those movies, I actually think Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, like the titles should have been flipped, because like Robin does get introduced in that third movie, and then with Batman Forever, it's like, hey, it's the fourth one. You could just like slap the number 4 in there and it'd be Batman Forever and it would work. But yeah, that's not what they did. But like I said, I kind of came late to like the whole Batman thing. Like the first DC show that I got really into as a kid was the Teen Titans cartoon. And so like because I had Robin in it, it was like tangentially Batman related. Like and it was this weird time where I thought that Teen Titans, the Justice League cartoon, and the 2004 show The Batman were like, I thought those were all in the same universe and one was a prequel to the others, but I was like completely wrong. They're all 3 different universes.
And you're actually like, it's actually kind of funny because Teen Titans, I knew about Robin, but I honestly, because I didn't read comics, I just watched the TV shows, but I knew they were comics. But basically for this, when I was watching Teen Titans, when it initially came out, I was like, oh, it's Robin, and 4 original characters. I didn't know at the time they were actual DC characters until I was reading a DC encyclopedia, and I was like, they're real characters? I'm an idiot.
They're in comic books, they are real.
Well, real in the sense that they're actual characters, not like made for TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got what you meant. I was just being facetious. It was actually like the Christopher Nolan movies that got me really into Batman. Like out of those 3, like I know it's like kind of a minority opinion. I think I've mentioned this on the Morbius episode, but Batman Begins is my overall favorite of that trilogy. Although I do think that Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight is the best performance out of that trilogy. And I think it was like after The Dark Knight Rises came out, I like borrowed like this trade paperback that my friend in high school art class had. It was of like the earliest like Detective Comics and Batman stories, like, you know, 39, 1940. And like I was like reading those, it's like, huh, this is kind of weird, but I also really dig it, like seeing where it all came from. And so from that point, for like the next year or two, I would go to the library and get some Batman graphic novels and like read some of them. And like Long Halloween, I also read Hush at some point, you know, The Killing Joke, like the staples, like pretty much the staples, and like some slightly obscure things that were at the library. And yeah, I like got really into Batman to the point where like I think it was in like 2013, I typed up this outline of like what I would do if I were in charge of like a live action Batman TV show. And like I went back and forth on whether it would be like 5 or 7 or 10 seasons. It's like this 10-page outline, and it's like basically like a detective genre Batman story. I titled it like Batman Detective Complex because it sounds like Detective Comics, and like the episode titles would have each had a word in it that pertains to like the subject of it. Like one of them would have been Bloodbath because it has the word bat in it, or like for like a Catwoman episode, it would have been called Scattered because it has the word cat in it. And yeah, it was like just super detailed. It was like, yeah, I was like all in on the Batman thing, and you know, enjoying other shows like Young Justice. And yeah, I also like watched the Bruce Timm like DC AU stuff, and I've loved the like animated direct to video movies that have come out over the years. And like when I got into DC Universe when it launched a couple years ago, I think almost 3 years ago, and it's like, yeah, there's like so much to read. It got through like the New 52 stuff and some of the Rebirth stuff and some other things here and there, and it's like, yeah, like Batman is my favorite superhero. I guess that's like my roundabout way of like saying that. Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, do you have any favorite story arcs?
Okay, so I've never read the comic book version of it, but I love the Under the Red Hood movie. I also enjoyed. I don't think this is like one of my like all-time favorites, but I really enjoyed the experience of going through the No Man's Land storyline. I feel like that hasn't been adapted the best way. Like Gotham season 5 didn't like, well, like I found that adaptation of that storyline underwhelming. Like Gotham was a weird show because it obviously villains are around before Batman's around, which is kind of negates some things for me, but I did appreciate how it included obscure villains like Professor Pig and Hugo Strange, even if the finale was really underwhelming. But yeah, I also love like the Long Halloween is probably one of my all-time favorites. Like I love the story as well as the like art style of it, and I love the one that's like a sequel to that. It was
Dark Victory.
Yeah, Dark Victory. Yeah, I love both of those. Like they're so good. I also love the art style of the Arkham Asylum comic from like the late 80s. It just looks so surreal. And yeah, well, there's probably like some other Batman stories that aren't coming to mind right away, but it's like there are a lot of good ones. Like a lot of the New 52 stuff, like the Court of Owls, and like there's like so much to draw from. And
What about you? Do you have favorite storylines?
Long Halloween is probably my favorite. I mean, that's a obvious answer. For others, I would say like the first half of Nightfall, where Batman's just fighting all of his villains. Everything else just is there. I would also say like some other stuff like Arkham Asylum that like you referenced. Another one of my favorites, and this is a low key one, is Batman Shaman.
Okay, so
really
so
cool.
like Thor's brother is in that.
No, it's like a low key.
Yeah,
I see what you did there. You're not clever.
I know.
But it's like a story that's set like shortly after Batman Year One, and it's a neat storyline of like Batman dealing with like mysticism and like it's a psycho thriller. And another good one, and this is probably one of my top 5. Like actually I'll go further. It's one of my top 3 Batman stories. Is Batman Gothic by Grant Morrison, who also did Serious House on Serious Earth. That is a brilliant story. It's a straight up like horror comic. Like this, it feels like Morrison was writing a Universal monster story and a little bit of Hitchcock in there. Like it's hard to describe. You just need to read it. Like it's this very self-contained, and it lives up to the the Gothic name.
Right. I feel like it's possible I may have read this one, but I don't know for sure. Like I don't have it marked on Goodreads, which is why I'm kind of doubting myself. But I've definitely heard the title before. There's like a lot you can do with Batman, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I think Batman is a very malleable character. Like you can do dark and gritty stories and cool detective stories, or you could do like fun sci-fi adventures, or because honestly my favorite Batman cartoon is Brave and the Bold.
I love Brave and the Bold. Yeah, it's so good, and it's a love letter to the Silver Age, and it even has like the finale. Like I won't spoil what the finale is for anyone who wants to watch it, but it honestly brought tears to my eyes, the like final moments of the finale when I finally got around to watching it like a couple years ago.
But yeah, that's the thing about Batman, is that he's a very malleable character. I mean, in essence, all comic characters are malleable, but like you can have Batman off fighting demons or fighting aliens, and you wouldn't bat an eye about it. And he's this street level character.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. Hey, I can make the puns too.
Yeah. You could also have like a Lego Batman, and it just works.
Yeah. But this is coming from a Superman fan.
So you prefer like Superman over Batman?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for me, like I was thinking about this like a little while ago. Like Batman is like the superhero I'd want to be, but Clark Kent is the person I'd want to be. Like I just feel like he generally seems like a more well put together person, like in his personal life, I guess. Whereas like Batman like looks cooler, and it's like I'd love to just like have the cowl and like the cape and all the gadgets. And yeah, I guess that's like my thing. I want like both those two sides of the whole thing, but yeah, I'm greedy.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of like about this movie, is that it does go back to the grim roots, but like at the same time, it's like it acknowledges that and this is what I love about it, is like it's a nice marriage of the Nolan kind of realism, but at the same time it's playing with like the Tim Burton Schumacher kind of like, yeah, you could see superpowers here.
Yeah, definitely. Like it was already a given that it would be somewhat grounded because of the noir feel that Matt Reeves wanted to go for. But I was pleasantly surprised how like every now and then they'd mention like supernatural stuff, because like this is year 2 of Batman's career in this universe. And
also like, side note, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was like, thank God this isn't another origin story, and it's like a lived-in Batman. It's a lived-in Batman universe, and I like that. Like it's a beautiful. It's not a sequel. It's just this it's a first movie to a new universe, and it's lived in. I don't need to see the friggin' origin for the 100th time. I want to see I want to see more superhero movies like this, where it's not the origin story and it's just this is the lived-in universe, like what Dredd did.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't show a flashback of like his parents getting gunned down again. Like it's like we already know it. But what I was gonna say is like with like the supernatural stuff, I was pleasantly surprised that there are like these flashbacks to when like Batman Bruce Wayne was traveling the world before, like when he was training to prepare to become Batman, and he encounters like this really obscure villain from like really old comics called the Mad Monk. And he's played by, like, the monk, for those who don't know, is a vampire. And I remember when I like read the original story like 9 years ago now, I guess, I was like really struck by how like in that story Batman uses a gun because like silver bullet to like kill the vampire. And it's like, I guess, before the like no kill rule or whatever. And so it's like in this movie he thinks about that moment and he's like, yeah, I killed a monster, but like I'm still kind of haunted by that as I like deal with these other monsters. And like the monk was like played by Rupert Penry Jones, who I guess played a half vampire in The Strain. I wasn't able to keep up with that show, but yeah, it sort of feels like this meta thing because like Robert Pattinson played a vampire and now he's Batman dealing with like remembering vampire stuff, like this trauma, I guess.
Yeah. And honestly, I was kind of like, I've been on the Batman boat, because I was like, everyone just thinks of Twilight for this, but I was like, no, I'm thinking of Robert Pattinson from The Lighthouse or some of the other movies where he's like, you know, been nominated for an Oscar. I think he was a very perfect pick for a younger Bruce Wayne. Like, yeah, and also, this is my favorite Batman costume in any of the movies.
Yeah, it like I remember when the photos first surfaced, like some people were saying, "Oh, the ears are too short." It's like, really, you people are the reason we can't have nice things. Like, just like stop prejudging it this much. Like, wait until the movie comes out and then like say what you feel. I guess. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, going back to like the supernatural stuff and like the more like comic book aspects, is like you see like on newscasts, which actually it's a fun reference. I love the newscasters where they're back and forth, because that's a direct reference to Dark Knight Returns with the two news anchors, and they actually look a lot like the news anchors from Dark Knight Returns. And even I'm not the biggest fan of that comic. I mean, I acknowledge that it was a major point in comics in general, but like, I personally am not a fan, but I was like, oh, that's a neat little DKR reference. But no, when the news anchors are talking, they're like, you hear little like news snippets of them, like reports of are there two Batmen in Gotham? Obviously, a reference to Man Bat and strange. And then you see like little news crawls where it's like unknown creature seen near Slaughter Swamp, and I was like, oh, that's Solomon Grundy. Just little neat things like that, you know.
Yeah, there are like these little blink and you miss it moments for like the casual viewers, but if you've like, it feels like there's a lot of things that people who are more familiar with the lore will recognize, and I got a real kick out of that. It was like, wow, yeah, Matt Reeves and everyone else who worked on this really did their homework.
I even liked the little thing about talking about a hypnotist under arrest, and I was like, wait, was that a reference to the Mindbender?
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the Mindbender from the comics.
You would probably remember him better for a one-off episode in The Batman, but he is like a C-list Batman villain who's like a hypnotist and has like mental abilities in some cases.
Okay, yeah, I love when Batman stories do stuff like that. Like they bring the more obscure like C-list things like as a reference, or even like to the forefront, like New 52 did with I think Carl Halfern was his name, Dr. Death. Like they modernized that character, and yeah, like there are lots of villains in like the Batman catalog that you could pull from.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this more when we get to Arkham, but like I love the little scenes in Arkham like where you're passing by all the little names. I was like, man, for 2 years we got some villains in here. Like there's a reference to the Ten-Eyed Man. There's a reference to Killer Moth. A lot of like C-list, because I would imagine that not like it's only year 2. We haven't seen like the full transition from Gotham's underworld, criminal underworld, to the supervillains taking over. Because year 2, in like, if you want to, year 1 is like Batman versus the mob. That was 1. Year 2 is like that transitional period, and then year 3 is when we get Robin, and now the inmates are literally running the asylum being the city.
Yeah, pretty much. And in this arc, like, I know we're kind of like jumping around, but in this Arkham scene, like, I loved when they go to like the Arkham West part of it, and like they talk about like the founder of the asylum, Amadeus Arkham, and they look at this painting of him, and it looks a lot like Adam West. And so I thought that was like a nice little like posthumous cameo that they did for him, like, you know, like acknowledging the old in like that type of way.
Yeah. And then we had Jeremiah Arkham in here, and Jeremiah, I actually love the casting of Jeffrey Combs as Jeremiah Arkham.
Wei-Yun from Deep Space Nine himself.
Yep. Well, I know him as Herbert West from Reanimator, but that's it.
Oh yeah, like Reanimator also has an Arkham Asylum, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's Arkham Asylum actually
like
started
Lovecraft influence.
Yeah, it's Craft. It was tied to Lovecraft.
Right.
But yeah, I love that little, like, it was a nice little marriage of Lovecraft and Batman with having Combs here. And how did you like the insides of Arkham? Because that was straight out ripped out of Serious House on Serious Earth. The design of it.
Yeah, it looked very like, it felt like a dungeon in terms of like the atmosphere of it, and like it is like, who designs this way? But of course, like if it's in Gotham, like that's how it would be. It's what I feel like if it was in any other city, people would just question it, but in Gotham it somehow works. You know, this city where you can have like Gothic looking buildings or like Depression era looking buildings, and it's like, it's really impressive how they're able to make all these different influences work in this city, like even just in this movie.
Yeah. And also, it's nice to actually reference more of Arkham, because I look back at the other Batman movies, Arkham's just a background piece. Here, it's like a pivotal part.
Yeah, like Arkham, at least in the Nolan movies, I think Arkham just looks like a generic asylum. Like, it doesn't really pop like you would expect it to. And so it was really cool having it presented here in this fashion.
Yeah, and actually like have a meaning to it. Other like Batman Begins, that was the only other time I could imagine Arkham like being like part of the movie. Like, it's not like a backdrop or mentioned.
Yeah, like Arkham Asylum actually feels like a character in this movie.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like Arkham should be, is like, it's a monster that no one wants to meet, you know?
Yeah, it's a monster house.
That, kids, is what we call a callback.
Yeah. It's like the comic book panel where, like, at the bottom it'll have the text and it'll be like, as seen in issue blah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I also like, getting back to the story itself of the movie, I like that this movie is a detective story. And it's like, oh, it's a straight up, like, it's still like a criminal noir kind of story, but it really, like, this movie, even more than I would say most of the Batman movies, this really embraces a Batman. Like, this embraces like all the elements of Batman, because you've got the criminal noir stuff, and you've got the fun, like, super villain aspect to it too. It's like, it doesn't try to be like, oh, we're going to go one lane or another. This movie literally says to the audience, no, we're going straight down it's a superhero movie, but it's also a detective story, and that's what makes Batman.
Yeah, because there are aspects of like the detective in Batman and some of those other movies, but like this one just leans full into it, and it's just so satisfying to see. And well, like, we've had noir type superhero movies before, like Watchmen was kind of like that, and we also had Dread, which was really great. And it's like Well, yeah, why can't we have that, but for Batman finally? And like now here we have it, like in live action anyway. So it's like this is the movie I'd been waiting years to see.
Yeah. And I when Matt Reeves was announced to be director, I was like, I'm all in because that dude is a super underrated director. I mean, if you want to look at how good he does as a director, go look at his Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah, he directed the second and third ones, and those are like I love those movies. And so like whenever people were like doubting this movie, The Batman, I was like, I mean, I have a lot of faith in Matt Reeves, so like I'm not that worried about it. And like having seen The Batman now, it's like I feel totally vindicated. Like all the people who were like saying they're gonna hate this are coming around acting like they were always rooting for this movie, and it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever.
It's literally the Ouroboros effect. You know, the snake eating its own ass. But basically what I mean is that, you know, you've got the fans who like moan about, oh, this is not what I wanted in the comics. And then they see a trailer or go see the movie and like, oh, I was totally all for this movie. I absolutely love this movie. I was never bad mouthing it at all. And we repeat the cycle over and over again. That's what I like to call it the Ouroboros effect.
Right. I mean, speaking for myself, like there have been times where I've said, yeah, I'm not looking forward to this movie. I think I'm probably not going to like it. Like I thought that way for Joker and for Zack Snyder's Justice League, but after watching those, I admitted that like, okay, I was not looking forward to these. I didn't think I'd enjoy them, but I was wrong, and I really like them. You know, so I try to be honest about that type of stuff.
Yeah. You see, I was like that with Zack Snyder's Justice League, but the other movie that I wasn't all for was the X-Men First Class movie.
Oh, and that's one of the best ones.
I know, but like I wasn't hyped for it because of how bad I'd been burned by every other X-Men movie, and like I just wasn't feeling it. But then I saw the movie finally. I was like, man, I'm stupid.
Yeah, they finally got some freaking color in a comic book movie. Like, because with like the older X-Men movies, it was like, I'm really not into these leather suits and like some of the lighting. And it's like with First Class, they finally like took a hint and we're like, yeah, this feels more like a comic book movie. So yeah.
Yeah. So I really like, again, we're going with a lived-in universe, but we're still like year 2 of Batman. So even though, yes, like Batman's still kind of like in the shadows, like it's like Batman, he's still like known, but like we don't know that he's a dude. Like most people think like, oh, is it a creature? Because like people accept that there are monsters out there or supernatural beings. So they're like, is he human or is he like the guy in Metropolis or that's what I like is like, yeah, that's what people would do if there's a world of superheroes, people would instantly go, so he's like that guy.
Yeah, it's kind of like early Darth Vader when people weren't sure. Like there are some people who weren't sure if he was like a real dude or whatever because, you know, being in the shadows. And I mean, there's even like a little callback to like, I think it's Legends of the Dark Knight, where like there's a brief shot where you see some kids on the street talking to each other, like they're different interpretations of like what they think the Batman actually is. And it's like, yeah, that's a callback to Legends of the Dark Knight.
And that was actually a really cool intro to the movie. Like it wasn't like some dark or whatever. It was just 3 kids talked about, hey, this is what I think Batman is. I was like, okay, for a dark movie, that's a neat intro. And it was actually pretty cool of like how they parallel the kids talking about what they think Batman is, and it's paralleling him breaking into like a drug house, like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a drug lab.
Drug lab. Thank you. Drug lab.
I don't know if that's the exact term, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and like as they're talking about it, like how these kids think Batman looks like is like this is like like Batman is kind of like mimicking how they interpret Batman. Just as that parallel goes on, Batman's kind of like skulking through the rooftops and when they go by the Man-Bat thing, or he's like just a shadow on the wall, or like a monster in the nightmare, and in how the kids interpret it. And then we finally like like Batman, like in full at the end of that conversation, like this is Batman, like cool. I was like, I dig that.
Yeah, and you get like the title like coming in full view, like taking up the entire screen. It's in all red, and it's like, yeah, and like the music comes in, it's like very noir. It's like, yeah, I'm all in for this movie already.
Yeah. I also like that this is like a Gotham that like we've always had that thing of like is the GPD all for all for Batman, and I like how in here it's like, yeah, we're for him, but like we don't know anything about him. We're just following Gordon's thing. Like is Gordon's okay? We're cool with it, but like at the same time, it's like, is he though?
Yeah, because at this point we have this commissioner named Pete Savage, and it's like he's basically putting all his trust in Gordon, who's like Batman's ally in this thing. But like Pete Savage is very skeptical, of course. But like I really liked how is it Jeffrey Wright who played Gordon in this? Yeah, like I think he did a really great job playing him here.
I really liked him. I think he's my second favorite Gordon. I mean, it's not hard. It's either this or Gary Oldman. Really.
Yeah, Gary Oldman like nailed it. Yeah.
But Gary Oldman, I still think is the best Gordon. I think honestly, if there was more stuff with J.K. Simmons Gordon, I think he would have been my favorite. If there was more with him.
Yeah, I enjoyed what we saw of him, and
yeah, I think he was a really great Gordon. He plays this very like, I'm exhausted. Like we're only 2 years into this, and I'm already like, what is going on? Like I was cool with the mob and all that, but now we're dealing like more and more of these guys who have like a gimmick or they have powers. I'm just a dude with a badge.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like going to a new school and your second year there, you're like, yeah, I'm just over it. I'm so burnt out from all this.
Yeah. And I like that. It's like we never get to see like Gordon's take on, we hardly ever get to see like Gordon's take on like the world changing, and like there's literally a guy who can fly into space and he can shoot lasers out of his eye, or a dude with a power ring. What the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, like I really appreciate how even though like the Batman like they were intending this to be like its own world, I still appreciate that we had like little references here and there to like, okay, there are these other DC heroes in this universe, and they're obviously different versions from others we've seen, but it's just that the story is focused on Gotham like overall, and it's like, yeah, it feels very grounded, but also it gives you that reminder of like what type of universe this is.
And again, it's like an early DC universe, and I like that. Like, because we don't know Flash, because we still don't have a Flash here. We don't have a Wonder Woman yet. All it seems to have, we have Superman and maybe Green Lantern, and maybe and they make a reference to the Justice Society.
Right, and like if there is a Green Lantern, we don't even know which one, because like there's so freaking many.
For all we know, it could be Alan Scott.
Right, like there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, because they do reference the Justice Society, and this is supposed to be an Earth 2 Batman, so that would make sense. So, what did you think of like the overarching story of this whole detective thing, and like how it affects everyone in Gotham, and like, because this is a Riddler like that is straight up terrifying.
Yeah, it feels very much like one of those like serial killer thriller movies like Seven. And I think Paul Dano, he's a really great actor. Like he's played a killer in this movie called Taking Lives, and he was really creepy in Prisoners, and like he's been in a bunch of things. It's like when it was announced that he was cast in this role, I was like, oh, they made a really great choice. And like he does these like really, like the way he delivers the riddles, it sounds so unsettling. Like he's memorized them by heart, but makes them sound creepy. Like the first glimpse that we get of him is when like the camera is like zooming out from like his mouth and teeth and showing him biting into what looks like a McGriddle, but the McDonald's M's are like Riddler question marks like facing each other. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, is there a McDonald's in Gotham or what? But it's like it kind of reminded me of The Founder, which weirdly Michael Keaton starred in. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like this surprisingly honest movie about like the shady things that were done in order for McDonald's to be successful.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked it. Also, I have a feeling that the tape around his head that Riddler has for this, that had to have been a reference to the Invisible Man from the original Invisible Man movie.
Oh yeah. I watched like all of the Invisible Man movies, like the old ones, several months ago. Like after I watched the like remake that Lee Winnell directed, I was like really surprised how good the remake was, because it's like you think of the premise like, okay, an Invisible Man, it's like what sounds silly, and like the older movies are really silly, but Lee Winnell was able to make it like a really gripping thriller in my opinion. And it was like one of those unique situations where like I was surprised by how good the movie was, and then when the end credits come up, it says directed by Lee Winnell, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know he directed this, because I did not know beforehand. It's like having followed his journey kind of since like I first watched like the original Saw movie like 15 years ago, is like seeing where he ended up and like making such a great movie like that, like even after all this time, it was just a weird, satisfying feeling. Like I can't really describe it any other way.
I'm excited to see what he'll do with the Wolfman.
Oh, he's in charge of that?
Yeah, he's directing the Wolfman remake as well.
Nice. Like I've seen the old Universal Wolfman, like the original one, and Wolfman, like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and I think that's it. But apart from that, I like what I saw like when I was like a little kid was Alvin and the Chipmunks meet the Wolfman, and I think I'm still think that's kind of entertaining.
I'm almost tempted to like have you sit down and watch all the classic Universal monster movies and just like at least the original ones, not the sequel ones, but like the original seven.
I've seen the original like Universal Frankenstein and Universal Dracula, and I think at least a couple of the sequels for each. And I've seen like the Hammer horror versions of like those and the Mummy as well. So that was like several years ago, but like I think it got to a point where I like lost track of where I was in each film series and just like stopped trying and like didn't care anymore. But like, yeah.
But yeah, with getting back to the movie, like Riddler is like, this is like, not, if you thought this was going to be like Jim Carrey, you are wrong. Because he does some horrendous things to people. Like he put a puzzle, like he carved a puzzle into like a woman's back, and the only way you could read it was like through blacklight. That he put he put that dye in her body, and it's slowly killing her for the rest of her life.
Yeah, it was like very sneaky and subtle the way he did that, and it's really like it really shows like how like kind of evil he is, like making her die like a slow death like that, you know?
Yeah. And I like that moment where she's like, where Batman like says out loud, "There's no way we can save her, Jim," right in front of her face. Like he's so distanced from people. Like this is also, I love like the low key underhanded story of like Batman learning to like care about the people he's saving, because like he just has like no bedside manner. He's like, "There's nothing we can do, Jim. She's going to die in like at least a year."
Yeah,
like, right in her face.
Yeah, it's kind of like it makes sense to me, because I feel like for such a long time, and Bruce Wayne has been kind of avoiding social situations, except when he's trying to like put up a front. And like when we see Bruce Wayne in public, like at these events with like rich people in this movie, he has like such a cheesy wide smile on his face. It feels really Joker-esque, and it's like, or it also reminds me of like Dexter, you know, Dexter Morgan from the show, whenever he'd put on a cheesy smile to hide the fact that he's like doing really bad things. Like I just loved the effort that like went into that, like trying to like show these different like sides that Robert Pattinson is trying to play, like the Bruce Wayne who is sad in his private time at the mansion, the Bruce Wayne who pretends to be happy in public and look really arrogant so people don't suspect he's Batman, and the Bruce Wayne who acts as Batman and has to like do his duty and like try to investigate all this stuff.
Yeah. And I like that. Like, it's nice to have like a Batman who's just kind of like, because it would make sense, right? You've been so disconnected from people for years, and like for the first year and now 2 years, you've been like, okay, I'm saving people, but I can't get attached, or like they're just people I need to save. Like that's the best way I can look at them, and it's that kind of moment that is like, oh, yeah, that would make sense. Batman would be like kind of, I wouldn't say cold-hearted, but like even Gordon says, hey man, maybe you should have said that to me in private and not in front of her face.
Yeah, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of in Birds of Prey. What was it, Huntress, who was socially awkward, but in like kind of a different way because of being like, away from people.
Like they were trying to make her Drax.
Yeah.
and I hated that. But here it's like it's normal. Like it's played straight. Like, oh, that would make sense. Batman would not have any like bedside manner or whatever at this point in his life.
Yeah, like he has like these one-on-one talks with Gordon where like I guess like part of a little subplot of this movie is Gordon trying to teach Batman how to like interact with people better. And that's something that I didn't really expect to like see going into this, but like it really makes sense. Like, you know, Gordon has like his personal life with like his wife and whatever, and it's like he like I guess he's trying to make sure that there is indeed a human within Batman and he's not just this thing in the night, because if he is simply this thing in the night, then why should he put all his trust in him? You know, like he wants to be sure that there is a person in there.
Yeah, like how, like even he says, you know, you say you're human, but there's a part of me that thinks maybe you don't want to be. You know,
right?
And it's like that moment of like Gordon's like, there's another moment where Batman sees this crying child and he doesn't know what to do with it because he's locking up. Like they tell you without showing you, oh, he's reliving his, you know, his trauma with his parents dying in front of him, and it's kind of the same thing. And Gordon, like Batman, like tenses up. He doesn't know what to do with the kid. Gordon comes up and is like, hey, it's gonna be all right. And Batman just watches him like, damn it, I should have been able to, you know. He's like berating himself. He's like, I should have been there. And he's like, dude, it's nothing. I have kids. Something tells me you don't.
Obviously, we're at a point where Batman is not ready to have a Robin just yet. But yeah, like that moment really felt like when Gordon put like the blanket or jacket or whatever over kid Bruce Wayne's shoulder in Batman Begins. And it felt like a very human moment. And I like that they even included like a scene where like Batman is walking alone in an alley. He still has his cowl on and suit, but it's like he has like his head down, like he's staring at the ground as he's walking. You can tell, like even without seeing his entire face, that he feels like crestfallen and broken, that he wasn't able to, that he doesn't feel like he can deal with people in the right way, or kids, like especially. And without him even saying anything, you can tell that he's wondering if he'll ever really feel whole, because this is a mission he wants to accomplish, like fighting all these bad guys, but it's like you can tell there's like a wariness to him, like even still.
Yeah. It actually reminded me a lot of like Justice League New Frontier, where Batman's talking to Superman and Batman says, when he gets Robin and he like changes his costume from black to blue, and he says, I put on this costume to scare criminals, not children. It reminds me of that scene.
Yeah, I think New Frontier is one of the few I still have yet to see. So yeah, I really need to get on that.
Yeah. But I do like I was saying, like I do enjoy, like this is a Batman that's like, it wasn't overnight of him like interacting with people. It was like, it was a learning process, You want to talk about Catwoman real quick?
Yeah, so when she's introduced, like she's doing like this heist thing in a museum, and I really like the Michael Giacchino music. Like he loves using punny song titles, and so her theme here is "Cats Out of the Bag." I really liked how this museum looked, but what do you think of like how they went about like having her and Batman like interact with each other?
It was a very cool kind of scene because this is not like a Batman, and they actually like make a cool comeback, a callback to year one because Bruce instantly recognizes, oh, it's that prostitute who kicked my ass when I first started out. I mean, obviously you're gonna do the Frank Miller callbacks because Frank Miller is obvious Batman, but yeah, I thought that was pretty fun. I also enjoyed that this Catwoman is also not trying to be seductive, but she's like, no, you're a scary ass monster.
Yeah, like she has standards. Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet, and by the end of the film, we kind of like allude to it, and Batman, Bruce and Selina over Talia and Batman and Talia, just saying. Fight, 1v1 me, don't fight me, you will lose on this. I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that's, or I don't know, I don't interact with Batman fandom that much, but I feel like that's not even a huge hill to, like, it doesn't seem as controversial to me because I feel like Catwoman and Batman feels more like, yeah, like it feels more like the public consciousness would think that first, I guess, because she's been around almost as long as Batman has been in comics. It's like there's just that huge history. But yeah, I really liked Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, and she actually voiced Catwoman in Lego Batman movie, apparently, as well as Mary Jane in Into the Spider-Verse, which I just learned today.
Huh. Wow. But no, she was really good as Catwoman. I like her a lot more than Anne Hathaway's Catwoman. I think she got down like the personality. She's not like, she dresses like skimpy, and even like her friend Holly is talking to her like when she's putting on the costume. She's like, "Why do you have to dress like that?" And she's like, "It's it helps me like slip in between security systems, and B, it's like it'll distract people." Like she gets the idea from Batman. Is like, you know how that Bat dude wears like an emblem on his chest? Well, here's my emblem, and I'm like, that's a little, that kind of shows this was written by a man.
Yeah, I did kind of cringe there, but
I kind of like, I felt like a part of me go, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we still have like a ways to go in terms of like, Hollywood getting it right, like it's unfortunate that's taken this long, but yeah.
I will say, thankfully, that's the only time I cringed with the Catwoman comments like that. So thankfully, It was just one and over. So I was like, I will forgive it for that. They could have done more demeaning things to Catwoman, but thankfully, that was just it. That was the only one.
Right.
And I actually like how her story kind of intersects more with Penguin than it does with Batman. Like you're watching two separate stories that really interconnect very well. Like Batman's dealing with Riddler, Catwoman's dealing with Penguin and trying to steal from him. And I really like Colin Farrell as Penguin in this universe, and Penguin's my favorite Batman villain. So I really liked how they made him like he's a gangster, but like he is like has political ambitions. Like he's always had. Like that's typical Penguin 101. But like we even get the Iceberg Lounge, and I was like, well, I don't think we've ever had the Iceberg Lounge in any Batman. So and it's actually like it's I like the design of the Iceberg Lounge where it's like it's kind of ritzy. It's very much like upper class. But you clearly know when you walk in that room, oh, everyone here is a scumbag.
Yeah, it's basically like the Mos Eisley Cantina where there are lots of scumbags, but it just looks nicer. Like you see the drinks and it's like, whoa, I'd love to have one of those right now. It looks really good. And yeah, like Colin Farrell, like the way they made him look like the Penguin, it's like it's major props. Like he just like melded with the character. Like yeah, it felt like the Penguin, and I especially loved like the car chase when he's like trying to use lethal gas when like Batman and the GCPD are chasing him, And like the track that the Giacchino track that's playing during this, it's called Penguins of Mad Gas Car.
And not the strongest title.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but I love the sound of it. It was like, like I'm not doing enough justice to it, but it sounded really great.
Obviously
it's a great
not.
theme for the Penguin. But
I do like how like it's revealed that Riddler's whole scheme was not so much like it was some grand like killing spree. It was more like, oh, it was all a conspiracy, and he was trying to like reveal it. Like he was trying to reveal this conspiracy. He doesn't get a chance to because Batman busts him, and then you find out at the end of the movie. There's no after credit scene. Shocking, because you'd think every superhero movie needs a after credit scene, but no. At the end of the movie, it's revealed he's in Arkham, and he's screaming out into the empty hallways, "The owls are coming! The owls are coming!" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not even the biggest Court of Owls guy, but I was like, I kind of want to see the Court of Owls here."
yeah, I mean, I did kind of cringe at that moment because it just reminded me of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor saying, "The red capes are coming." And yeah, I did not like that.
Yeah. Like it makes me think if I go back and watch this movie, am I going to see, because they like Matt Reeves said, like, if you go back and watch the movie, like you'll get little hints of the Court of Owls the whole time. So I'm like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, like the mayor has a little owl statue, like a little a taxidermied owl in his in his office. I was like, I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah, I also vaguely remember like early on in the scene where like Carmine Falcone and his people are getting busted. Like in the background, I remember seeing like these gargoyles, and one of them looked like an owl. So yeah, like the foreshadowing was definitely there, but I guess in the moment I was just more focused on like the other stuff going on. Like I figured, yeah, they'll probably bring Court of Owls into the movies at some point. I just don't know if that's where they're going for sure. But by the end, it's like, yeah, that's where they're going.
Yeah, which I'm fine with. I mean, like, I'm not the biggest Court of Owls guy. I mean, they just had one good story. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed like their first story, and I also really liked the novel, which is also called The Court of Owls, that Greg Cox wrote, that came out a couple years ago. So yeah, but yeah, there is like a lot to tap into, like if you want to bring the Court of Owls into like the live action stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's the best way to go. I was really afraid we were just gonna go do Joker again. I was like, I don't need Joker again. Like I don't need Joker again. But like the fact that Court of Owls and like I want to see how they do, like how they put together this story of like obviously making it like a detective story, and you've literally got like the Court of Owls. They're literally controlling all of Gotham, and Batman's just a dude who's like people are scared of him. Like it wouldn't be that hard to turn like political opinion against him or whatever.
With the Court of Owls, like I mean, there's like just so much you can do. What'd you think of Andy Serkis's Alfred, like compared to other Alfreds?
I like his Alfred. I don't think he got a lot to do in this movie. But I do like he's still pretty good. Like this is a guy who's clearly like he's not like some old like yes, Mr. Wayne, yes, Master Wayne, and all that. He's more like this is dumb. Like this is like we've been doing this for two years. I thought you'd be like I initially thought like you would stop or at least help the police, and then you get it out of your system. But you keep going. What the hell, man?
Yeah, he has this like stuck up attitude, which reminded me of his Andy Serkis's character in 13 Going on 30, weirdly enough. But yeah, I really liked his skeptical Alfred, and like I just love Andy Serkis in anything really. He's like one of my like I think he's like one of the best actors out there. Like obviously, like I know people remember him for Gollum, but I think my favorite role of his, you probably know this already, is Caesar from the Planet of the Apes movies.
It still pisses me off that he never got an Oscar for it.
Oh, yeah, I don't really pay attention to award shows anyway, so it's like, eh.
But no, like the fact, like that, like I hate the Oscars, but like that solidified that man should have gotten an Oscar at least 3 times over with each movie with his performance for Seaver.
Have you ever seen The Adventures of Tintin?
Oh yeah, I actually love, like, I thought I'd hate that movie. I was like, oh, it's actually really good.
Yeah, I love that movie. And I remember, like, he does a great job playing I can't remember his name. It was the descendant of the pirate who's a drunk type of guy. And I remember reading that, like, when he was approached by Peter Jackson to be in the movie, he was afraid that Peter Jackson was going to ask him to do the motion capture for Snowy the dog, because like by then he'd already done motion capture for Gollum and King Kong, and I thought that was funny.
But no, I think like he plays a very realistic Alfred, and like, what are we doing, man?
Yeah, like we don't really see him in as much action as like the Sean Pertwee Alfred, or I guess the like younger Alfred from Pennyworth, which I still have yet to see. Probably has like a lot of action as well, but yeah, like this is not that type of Alfred, but it's like just the like skepticism of it, like the way he like rolls his eyes at how Bruce is when he puts on the costume and is trying to look heroic, and then it cuts to Alfred, he's just like rolling his eyes. It's like, what a drama queen, like you can see that in his eyes.
Yeah. I like the moment where he's like, he's like, okay, Bruce, you got to be real honest with me. Are you just trying to kill yourself?
Yeah, and he doesn't even like answer the question directly. It's like you see Bruce's eyes shift while he has the cowl on. It's like, oh, maybe he kind of is, or maybe he's not sure. Maybe he's just like, seeing what happens.
Yeah, it's like almost like, is being Batman the world's longest suicide note?
Yeah, one bit of intercutting that I really loved was, like we mentioned, the kids at like the beginning of the movie, but like near the end when Batman's like going into like the final thing against the Riddler, like it cuts back to like one of the kids, and the kid is like, well, I think that no matter what, Batman is a hero. And then you see like Batman like in that final confrontation, and like he's doing some like I guess you could consider like very brutal fighting, but like at the end of it he comes out like as a hero, I guess. Like he's trying to like subdue himself. I guess he's learned a bit from Gordon by this point, as like trying to do things by the book. And it's like, okay, yeah, by the end I guess he's more heroic than he was at the beginning of this movie,
because he's literally putting people in the emergency room every time he gets into a fight in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not killing them, but like they ain't gonna live after seeing those hospital bills.
Yeah, like I feel like this is very comparable to Daredevil's arc in the Netflix show, which I really loved. And it's like, yeah, like I just love what they did with Batman in this movie. And like the crime scenes, they look very, very well designed. You know, you get like the autopsies where like it turns out the victims each have a piece of something, and when you put it together, it looks like a Riddler trophy. So like really putting in the shout outs and making it slightly campy. It's like, wow, they really went all out with these things.
Yeah.
So what are your final thoughts and score out of 10 for The Batman?
I wouldn't say that this is my favorite Batman movie right out the gate, but I definitely say this is like up there. This is in like top 5 Batman. This may change like over time when I see it more and watch it more, but as it stands, this is definitely like top 5 favorite Batman movies. I don't know where we're gonna go after with this movie. I'm surprised where we're gonna. I want to see where we go with the Court of Owls, and I'm more excited for more Pattinson Batman than I am Affleck Batman. There, I said it.
Yeah, I mean, Affleck didn't have a lot of good material to work with in BVS, but yeah.
My score is 4. Actually, no, 5 hospital bills in the emergency room by Batman out of 5. I could have worded that better.
Okay, so 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, for me, Like this is definitely my favorite Batman movie. Like I'm just gonna like admit that. And yeah, it's like I was looking forward to this for so long and it just delivered. It really leaned into that detective angle, like more so than any other Batman movie. The performances were great all around. And I mean, there were like other actors like we didn't even get to mention. Like there were those Carver twins who played like a more grounded type of Tweedledee and Tweedledum in this movie. Like it was a very brief scene, but I thought they were really funny. But yeah, and I really appreciated the restraint, like just not showing the crime alley flashback with his parents and not even teasing the Joker. Like the most we get is like there's that gang of people with face paint, and one of them has like white face paint and a black smile painted over their mouth. It's like that could be a Joker reference, but also might not be. Like it could go like either way.
I remember like in a scene like they're talking like the boss may be locked up in Arkham, but we can still do stuff.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that.
Yeah.
But regardless, like they didn't rely too much on like Joker stuff, and like the Joker is my favorite Batman villain, and he's like when he's utilized very well, it's very really cool to see. Like it's really a depending on writer type of thing, I guess. But yeah, I love that they didn't rely too much on that. Like people were skeptical because like we would still be getting familiar villains like the Penguin and Riddler, and you know also throwing Catwoman, but they were portrayed in a way that felt fresh and new. And like my favorite Riddler before this was the one in the Gotham TV show, but Paul Dano, he's my favorite live action Riddler now.
Yeah. It's also kind of the reason why I'm excited to see Court of Owls, because it's not your typical Batman villain in the movie.
Right. Yeah. I'm really excited to see like who they cast like in those Court of Owls roles. But yeah, all that is to say that my score for this movie, like it's hard for me not to go with like 10 out of 10 Riddler trophies. Like I just loved it that much. This might be my favorite movie of this year so far. I don't know if anything else will top it. We will see. But as it stands, yeah, this is my favorite movie of 2021 so far. Yeah, like I just loved the Batman. It was a fan's dream, I guess you could say. It was just, yeah, I can't say enough good things about this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it. That was like so much to talk about, but yeah, there's like so much packed into it, and it's just it's such a good movie, you know, and it's always great to talk about a great movie. Like it can be fun talking about movies that we maybe didn't enjoy and kind of like just poking fun at it, but it's also fun when we're able to see a movie that we loved and be able to like say what we loved about it, you know. And so this is one of those great experiences. So thanks for joining me again, Mr. Multiverse. Where can people find your stuff?
They can find me on YouTube.
Nice. YouTube, best internet site, probably. I don't know. You decide. Listeners, email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com and let us know if YouTube is the best. Or just let us know what you think of our coverage of these different movies, or what your favorite DC characters are. Like, I'm genuinely curious. And you can also follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can find my novel, Lemons Like Rain. It's on Amazon. More info at stevenshinder.com. And I mean, anything else I'm involved with, I'll just link in the show notes. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. And the next episode, we'll see what the next topic is. Maybe it'll be the maybe it will be the Tomorrow War, or maybe it'll be something else. We'll see. But without further delay, have a good day.